everyone, and welcome to Believe in Bills, presented by FanDuel. I'm Sal Maiorana, and my co-host Adam Manini still out this week, so I'm going to fly solo on the hosting part of it. But I have Dalton Wasserman from PFF Pro Football Focus to join me today, and the timing is obviously really good, Dalton, with the scouting combine coming up next week. I'll be in Indy from Monday to Friday. First of all, welcome to the show, Dalton.
Appreciate you having me on, Sal. Thank you.
All right. You going to be in Indy or no?
Yeah, we'll be there Tuesday. Actually, I think Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday we'll be there. I'm not sure when we're getting there Monday, but Tuesday and Wednesday for sure.
Okay. So, yeah, I've been going to Indy for a long, long time. You've probably been going there for a while. It's a great place to get the draft stuff going, right? I mean, it's everyone's there in one spot. I really enjoy it. What do you get most out of the combine when you go? Because you guys have done a lot of work on these college prospects ahead of time, but what do you get most when you go to the combine?
Yeah, I mean, obviously you want to see all the athletic traits match up to the talent of these players, right? And to me, there's a lot of times where you get into the bottom end, even those mid-round guys, where if they don't, get to at least a certain cutoff athletically, then you start to worry about, okay, do I need to go back and watch the tape a second time? So obviously the athletic measurements are very important in the process. And then to me, I just love hearing all the coaches and GMs talk, right? I know some of them will reveal more throughout the process than others, but love how they approach their offseason, and it really gives you an idea of how they want to go about both free agency and the draft coming up.
All right, so let's jump right into the Bills end of this thing. It's odd for us this year in Buffalo. No Sean McDermott. We were not expecting that to happen. And to me, I don't know. You give me your opinion on this. I mean, these scouts were out the whole college season, and they've been scouting players probably pretty similarly to Sean McDermott's philosophies and all that. What do you think a coaching change does to the scouting process the previous fall? Do you think it affects much, or is that kind of overblown?
I think it affects a lot, honestly, because I think the big theme of what's happened here since the Bills season ended was we have learned that this organization was not as aligned over the last couple of years as we thought it was, right? There was a while, obviously, early in McDermott's tenure when everything got turned around and they started making all these playoff runs that clearly him and Brendan Bean were on the same page, but over the last couple of years, that's deteriorated, right? So I think that's really the biggest effect here is you want, I should say vertically, your organization to be as aligned as possible. Your GM, your head coach, your coaching staff, the scouts in the scouting department, everybody traveling, around the country to find these players. Everybody needs to be on the same page as far as what they're looking for, because there's two parts of it. One is talent evaluation and just what a college kid is right now, and two, how to develop them. And a lot of people are going to have different visions. You put 20 guys in a room, they're going to have different opinions on everything, but they've got to be aligned with the same goals and the same vision. And I think that's the part that was lost the last couple of years between the front office and the coaching staff.
Tell me about, PFF's grading system. How much more difficult do you think it is grading college prospects as opposed to NFL players? Is there a big difference in how you do it? And with the different levels of competition, all FBS schools are not alike, as we know. How difficult is that to get proper grades on the college kids particularly?
Yeah, so our process works the same, right? And we get two passes over it, right? We do it live once, and then once we get the all-22 in, which is actually, I would argue, even quicker than after the NFL games. We get that college all-22 in pretty quick and start working on that throughout the week. The process is the same. I would say, having done both sides of it, that the harder part of college is you have a lot of different schemes that are used in college and viable down there that don't really get used much in the NFL. And the other thing is you kind of get more of those mental mistakes, right, from college players. They're less experienced. So many guys transferring now, just trying to figure out their assignments on the fly. Even in college, after spring ball, there's less practices than ever, right? So you really don't have that much time as a player to get that chemistry going with your team. So especially early in the season, you could see a lot more mental mistakes than you would in the NFL. So really the process is the same. You just get a little bit different feel for the players and how they're really understanding and executing their assignment.
I think one thing that I'm interested in, and I'm sure the listeners of this show would probably be interested in, because I've subscribed to PFF. I use it all the time. It's, I think you guys do great work. Give me an example. Monday morning, games are over. You get the all 22. How long does it take? Well, first of all, is there one guy per NFL team, or are there multiple guys? That's one question. And number two, how long does it take to go through that film and do the stats and grade all the things you do?
So there's a bunch of people. I mean, all of our full timers and our senior level analysts, and I was one before I moved over to the content side. All of our senior level analysts, they really, I would say the reviews on the grading process probably take anywhere from 2 to 3 hours. And even that we split into 3 different parts, where you have the pass rush and pass pro side, you have the run game, and then you have quarterbacks and their reads and receivers and coverage players and all that. So even just reviewing the grades, that's split into 3 different parts, and generally 2 or 3 different people are doing that. But then you even have our other processes. You talk about charting coverages, charting different pass protection schemes, quarterback charting, where we get the coverage scheme as a whole, and then, get things like our accuracy metrics and things like that, ball placement. So there's really a lot that goes into it. When you talk about the number of hours and the number of people that go into each game, it's probably somewhere in the teens just for one game. And you're talking about in total, as far as manpower, probably at least 10 to 12 hours of work into each one, right? Because you just have things that we do in all sorts of different directions. It's not just the grading, it's all the coverage charting and O-line, D-line things, and even just things like formations and motions and charting, that sort of thing. Probably even more than the 10 or 12 that I estimated. But there's a lot of people that get their hands on every single game, but they do a great job and they're very efficient about it.
So when the grades come out, how are the grades implemented? I mean, is it just like, do you mean average? Or do all the guys grade the film individual and then you come up with an average grade, or how are the grades produced?
So every player on every play, they get either it could be a neutral grade. So we have our grading scale, which works in half-point increments from basically -2 to +2. So there's a lot of 0.5 and +1. Like, for example, when we talk about big time throws, those are throws that get a +1 or higher on that scale, right? So it's essentially in 9 parts, and on every play, we're looking at every single player going, okay, did they execute their assignment well, above expectation? Was it some sort of big time play, like a big time throw? Is it a pick six or something like that deserves to be on the lowest end of the scale? That all goes, we do it on a play-to-play basis, and then we have our systems that spit out the final number to it and really use mainly the components of those, the percentage of positively graded plays and negatively graded plays. Every position is a little bit different when it comes to the scale, just because how certain things work, like pass protection. You get guys that have to creep their way a little bit higher towards those upper 80s and 90s, right? They really got to keep a clean sheet and not have any negatives. So there's different ways that different positions kind of get graded and how that goes, but the scale is the same, and it really is a product of how many more positive plays are you making than the negative ones.
Okay, good explanation. All right, let's get into the draft now a little bit. Bills needs. I mean, obviously, we've been talking about this for, months with the Bills, the lack of talent in their wide receiver room. We'll start there. Give me your impression of this wide receiver class in 2026. Bills have the 26th pick overall. I don't know how many first-round grades are going to be available for wide receivers, but what is your general impression of how this wide receiver field looks?
We don't have a necessarily Jamar Chase or Calvin Johnson type of prospect at the top, even though it's entirely possible you could see 3 wide receivers go in the top 15 or 16 picks. But I think it's a pretty deep group with a lot of players who are going to get taken in the top 80 to 100, right? I don't know that you'll get a superstar, one of the top 5 receivers in the league, but there are starting caliber players that are going to be taken at this position probably through the 3rd round, right? So when you look at the Bills in the 1st round, it could be a player like a Denzel Boston from Washington, who I have as at least the 4th best receiver. There's some who have him even higher. If you look into the 2nd round, look at a guy like Elijah Surratt from Indiana. The 3rd round, guys like Jeremy Bernard and maybe Malachi Fields, and even those guys are projected by some to go even higher than that. So it is a deep group. There's a lot of talent. There's a lot of different types of talent. I think all the way through round 3, you could find starters, and all the way through round 5, you can find some contributors.
Guys that are going to be, we think, are going to be in the Bills range, guys like Casey Concepcion. I know Boston is one of those guys. What about Brazel from Tennessee? I think he's probably late 1st, early 2nd. What do you, can you kind of give me your thoughts on maybe those 3 guys who might be in that range at number 26 for the Bills?
So I think Boston is probably 50-50, because there's some teams before Buffalo. I think about, say, the Pittsburgh Steelers that do need wide receiver help, and I think he's going to be the 4th receiver taken after Mekhi Lemon and Carnell Tate and Jordan Tyson. I think Boston's more 50-50. Concepcion, I think, has a better chance, a little bit undersized. I think he compares pretty well to Luther Burden III, who was drafted early in the 2nd by Chicago last year. Similar types of players, Concepcion is a little bit smaller. I think he's a little more possible. And Chris Brazzell, I think, will be available at that spot at 26. I see him as more of a second-round prospect, but lately, because he's 6'5" and he can really run, he's a guy who's been rising up some scouts' draft boards as well. So I wouldn't put it out of the question. I think him and Concepcion will definitely be available there at 26, barring anything really unforeseen.
So the Bills, a lot of the talk with the Bills is they need that X receiver. Is there a guy who stands out in this draft as the X receiver that might fit pretty well with Buffalo's needs?
I would say Denzel Boston is that guy. I think he compares very well to Jaden Higgins, who the Houston Texans took early in the second. And I wonder if they thought about taking him, if they didn't get that trade with the Giants, the Jackson Dart trade. I wonder if they would have taken him, I believe, at number 25 last year, right? I think both very good route runners for the size, quicker than you think. The release package is good. The hands are just absolutely excellent. And I know Joe Brady will love the fact that he's one of the best run blockers in the country through. I think Denzel Boston, if you're talking about in that range, I think Chris Brazzell is a little bit less physical than Boston is, maybe a little straight line faster. But if you're talking about the guy that could be there at 26 or maybe even trade up a few spots, Boston is that guy.
So if we get down a little deeper, the Bills may not go first round wide receiver. There's a lot of talk about edge rusher or even linebacker for the Bills, and we'll get to those positions. But if the Bills put it off to maybe the second round, I forget what number they picked, but later in the second round, even the third round, is there a guy maybe in one of those spots that might stick out to you for what Buffalo is looking for?
If you're looking for that X receiver, there's a couple of guys that stick out for sure. Elijah Surratt from Indiana, not going to be a blazer, might be a high 4.5 or 4.6 guy, but he's tough as nails, solid route runner, excellent to the back shoulder, and he just makes so many tough contested catches. He's as reliable as they come. He doesn't have quite the ceiling that a Denzel Boston or a Carnell Tate has, but I think in the second round especially, you could see Surratt be available to them out of Indiana. And another guy in that same state, actually, Malachi Fields from Notre Dame. I think the separation will be key for him. I know that's something we heard about Keon Coleman, and that hasn't really worked out so far through his first couple of years. But 6'4", can really go up and get it. Awesome red zone weapon. And to be honest, I saw him down at the Senior Bowl in Mobile. Better route runner than I thought he was down there. If he can keep that going and his route running is at least at an average level, Malachi Fields is somebody they're going to think about as well.
So, that's what we're talking about here, because, my view on guys who make contested catches in college is that they aren't getting open, right? They're required to make contested catches. And Keon Coleman came to Buffalo. That was like the number one thing everyone talked about. Yeah, he made contested catches. Then you watch his film, you watch his highlights. Yeah, he's contested catching because he's never open. So route runners and guys who can get separation are what the Bills need. And you think there should be somebody in this draft who could get that done for the Bills. You just talked about a couple, but that's the trait the Bills really need. Would you agree?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, you're always looking for hopefully all of those traits, in one body. Obviously, guys like Puka Nacua who can do both, the king of the contested catch, but he can also get himself open. If you're looking for more natural separators, then I think you talk about maybe an Omar Cooper, Elijah Surratt's teammate from Indiana, or maybe a Jeremy Bernard from Alabama. And there's some good route runners that are even going to go in that, round 3 to 5 range as well. So just depends what you're looking for. And you know what? If you think guys are talented enough, take multiple swings at the position, because there's some of them that bring special teams value as well.
All right, let's move over to the defensive side, because that obviously there's a lot of things going on here with Jim Leonhard coming in. We anticipate it is going to be a different defense than the Bills have run for a long, long time. And I think the Bills currently have some personnel that can make the transition pretty seamlessly, quite frankly, especially up front. I think they've got some defensive linemen. They've also got some edge rushers, I think. Michael Hoyt, I think, can do that. Greg Rousseau can be that stand-up, outside edge rusher type of guy. But if we're looking edge rusher in this draft, again, keeping in mind where the Bills pick at number 26, is there someone that would stand out in a 3-4 front who could be an outside stand-up edge rushing linebacker?
I think Cassius Howell, if you're looking for just a straight pass rusher and you want to add that sort of complement to Rousseau on the other side, who's or one of the best run defending edges in football, I think you look at Cassius Howell from Texas A&M, a little bit undersized, but super explosive. He was the best pass rusher in the SEC this year, bar none. I mean, he's just got such quick twitch off the edge. He's got great bend. He's relentless. He's just been so good throughout his college career. Cassius Howell is a guy who could possibly, because he's a little undersized, drop to that range. But to be honest, honest with you, there are so many good edge rushers in this draft. I even think about second round guys like even an R. Mason Thomas, if he were to fall a little bit into the mid-second round for you. He's a dynamic, lightning quick pass rusher. Or if they want a more violent type of player, I think you think about an Akeem Mesidor. If he drops to 26 out of Miami, a lot of people think he might be a top 20 talent, but he's a little bit older. Think about Zion Young from Missouri, who might get into that range as well. So depends what Jim Leonard's looking for. I think that's one of the really fun X factors. Being that Joe Brady's been there already on the offensive side, we kind of know what he likes in his offenses. But as far as the defensive side goes, Jim Leonard hasn't been a defensive coordinator since his days at Wisconsin a few years back. But I just am curious to see that transition and what types of players, because I know it's going to be a more attacking defense. I want to see how all three levels complement each other.
Thomas is the kid from Oklahoma, and obviously
Correct.
the Bills have hired Jay Valai, who was, I think the co-defensive coordinator last year at Oklahoma. He's going to be a DB's coach for the Bills. But give me a little bit more on Thomas, because we're trying to connect dots here of what Jim Leonard's looking for, but also some of these assistants are going to have a say. And Thomas is a guy who that name has come up because of the connection to Valai. What do you know? Do you have any more info on Thomas? What he can do?
Similar to Cassius Howell, explosive pass rusher. His first step off the ball is absolutely insane. It is lightning quick. And you talk about a guy who can get in more of those wide 9 alignments, just away from the tackle, let him win one-on-one in space, wide off the line of scrimmage, and he can get to the quarterback in an absolute hurry. Right now, projects pretty easily as a designated pass rusher type, probably 25 to 30 snaps a game. Really needs to add some weight and put some polish on as a run defender. I'd say even more so than Howell from Texas A&M. But Mason Thomas, man, the highlights, especially of him pass rushing, you don't get much better than that. There's very few pass rushers in this draft who get to the quarterback quicker when he gets off the ball than Thomas does.
All right, let's move to inside linebacker, because the Bills they've got to replace some people. Obviously, Matt Milano's gone. We think Shaq Thompson is going to be gone. I just wrote today, in fact, possible guys the Bills might want to re-sign would be Shaq Thompson, but we'll see. I'm not sure that's going to happen, but they do need an inside linebacker for this defense. But our assumption here is that Terrell Bernard, once he gets healthy again next year, will be a fit in this defense. I still think he's undersized, but I think the Bills need a thumper. They need a thumper at inside linebacker. I've heard CJ Allen's name as someone who could be available in that 26 spot, but do you have some guys? Maybe talk about Allen first, and then is there anybody else the Bills should be thinking about? Every down, 3 down, thumper inside linebacker.
Look, it certainly doesn't sound like Arvell Reese or Sonny Styles will get that late into the first round. So CJ Allen's really the first guy that I do think about when you talk. I love that fit. I think it's as good a fit for any player and team in the first round as we could ask for. CJ Allen's instincts are off the charts. He's athletic enough to be a 3-down guy. He was the leader of that Georgia Bulldog defense the last couple of years. And you mentioned the struggles in run defense. He is as good a run defender as anybody in the country at any position was over the last couple of years. Just I think the leadership and the instincts that he would bring. And you mentioned it. Yes, Bernard's a little bit undersized, but when you add a thumper like Allen next to him, that makes his job a lot easier on that weak side, and he can fly around to the edges laterally, get back in coverage and do what he needs to do back there. Because, I think one of the things that was missing with Milano out was the leadership, and all those injuries kind of took that off the field for Buffalo. And B, Milano was really the good coverage guy, and the Bills have had so much trouble defending the middle of the field. I think you get those two guys, Bernard and Allen, complementing each other. If that's that first round pick, it would be an outstanding one.
Yeah, people think a linebacker, you can't pick a linebacker in the first round. I don't understand that logic, man. That's the guy in the middle of your defense. And again, we're talking about a 3-down guy. We're not talking about a sub package type of guy. So I think Allen would be a really solid pick. I think Bills fans would freak out if they picked a linebacker in the first round, but I think it's kind of a smart play if that kid happens to be there. Let's go to safety. A lot of talk in Buffalo that they're probably going to sign a free agent veteran to replace Taylor Rapp, who's gone, and Jordan Poyer obviously is retired. A lot of talk about PJ Locke for the Broncos, the obvious connection of the dots there. If that doesn't happen and they look to do this in the draft, it's not going to be in the first round, maybe not even the second round. Is there a guy, maybe late second day pick, that could be a possibility for the Bills given what they want to do?
There's a handful. I mean, you've got some really good safeties in this class. This is as deep a safety class as we've had in a few years. So, even if you're not talking about the top guys up there at 26, like a Dylan Thieneman from Oregon, or maybe an Emmanuel McNeil-Warren from Toledo, I think you get into the next couple rounds. And I think about guys like Kamari Ramsey from USC, who's a heavy hitter. He really likes to get down in the box and tackle and stop the run. I think about Genesis Smith, if you want more of a coverage guy, a guy who's a little more versatile and can do a lot of things back there in the secondary. I think one thing Jim Leonhard is going to look for is players like that who are versatile, right? When we used to see him coach his defenses at Wisconsin, guys were flying all over the place, right? Safeties were everywhere. There was blitzes and stunts all over the place, and everybody is in their responsibility for filling a gap up front. So when you look at that, again, I even think in the first round it could be of interest to him. I think a Dylan Thieneman, Jim Leonhard would probably see a lot of himself in Dylan Thieneman in the way he used to play for Baltimore and the Jets. So there's really a lot of options. And I think that's the one luxury for the Bills going into this draft is, yes, they have a lot of needs, but this is such a heavy defensive draft that they could get starting caliber players going into round 3 and 4 on that side of the ball.
The kid from Toledo, Emmanuel, is it Warren Miller? What is it?
Neil Warren.
McNeil Warren. Damn. Okay. I actually saw him mocked to the Bills. One of the mock drafters gave him the Bills' first round pick at 26. Tell me a little bit more about him. From what I've read, the kid is a physical player. I don't know too much about his coverage ability, but it looks like he's, Emin Worry obviously took the league by storm last year. I would love to see a player like that in the Bills defense to go with Cole Bishop back there. But tell me a little bit more about the kid from Toledo.
Yeah, if you're looking for somebody to bring physicality to your secondary, you're finding it in Emmanuel McNeil-Warren, man. Playing that MAC brand of football, and for multiple years, really, I would argue, at least the last 2 years, been the best player on a really, really good defense down there at Toledo. Physical tackler, big-time hitter, and makes plays on the football. I believe it's 9 forced fumbles in his career. You talk about the king of the peanut punch and forcing turnovers. This guy's a playmaker. He brings physicality. I do think there is enough range for him to cover on the back end and get into all those rotations. I mean, he just did such a great job down there with Jason Candle coaching him as far as just making plays on the football. This is somebody who's been rising as more and more people have gotten into the tape. I've been aware of him basically since last offseason and going into this year at Toledo, one of the best safeties in the country, even at a MAC school. He's got everything you could ask for, especially for that tweener box type of safety that teams are looking for. Now, I'm glad you mentioned Eamon Warwick, because to be honest with you, his role in Seattle was pretty linebacker-ish. It's kind of the modern weak side linebacker. McNeil-Warren, if you want, instead of getting into a base defense, if you're trying to model your defense after what Seattle has done and the athletes they're putting on the field, you take McNeil-Warren, you feel pretty good about it.
All right. And the last thing I want to cover here is nose tackle, because that to me is the one deficiency the Bills are going to have when they make this transition to the new defense. People are talking about Deion Walker at 330 pounds. Now, I don't see that at all as a nose tackle. I tell people, I think he plays 6'7". He doesn't play 330. I think he's going to be better suited to that 4-eye, offset off the ball, similar to what Ed Oliver and probably TJ Sanders are going to do in this defense. But I think the Bills have got to find that plug in the middle of the line. They don't have that player currently on the roster. Dwayne Carter is certainly not that. So I've seen the kid from Ohio State, Caden McDonald is his name, who could be available at that point. I don't know if the Bills would want to go nose tackle in the first round, but tell me what you know about him specifically. And then, as I've asked you in the past here, take me back a couple rounds. Is there anybody that might stand out the Bills could jump on there?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of good run stoppers. And you talk about this nose tackle position. There's some really intriguing names early, especially. I think there's good run defenders throughout this draft, to be honest with you. It's one of the deepest parts of it. But McDonald's a brick wall. I mean, especially you talk about going into Ohio State and replacing Tyleik Williams, or I should say sitting behind and then replacing Tyleik Williams, who was a first-round pick last year. And he was even better. He was our highest graded defensive tackle in the country in run defense. Again, 320, 330 pounds up in that range. And you put him in either A gap, he is not moving. He just does not get moved backwards. It's one of those deals where it's like you are just not going to run between the tackles when Caden McDonald is in there. I think a guy that I would look at, we'll see if he gets earlier in the second round, or maybe the Bills would have to trade up for him. Very similar player on the Georgia Bulldogs, Kristen Miller. Again, plug him in there. clog the A gaps, create that space for your linebackers to make tackles in those lanes, and you're sitting pretty. I think these players now, these big defensive tackles that can take on those double teams and cause disruption up front, they're getting even more valuable because you mentioned it. Okay, if linebackers are valuable again, they need space to work. Those big double team eating defensive tackles are big time too. So I think those are going to be two guys very early, McDonald and Kristen Miller from Georgia, who are going to be on the Bills' radar.
I don't know. You give me your opinion on this. I think that nose tackle spot could be the key to this Bills defense because they've been so terrible against the run, playing in that 4-3 front, that nickel based defense. They just have not had that run stuffing guy in the middle of the line. I know a bunch of us in the Buffalo media were pining for Tavondre Sweat last year for the Bills to pick him, and it didn't happen because it wasn't a fit in that defense. So it's 1 year late here. But do you see the Bills defense just desperately needing a big body guy in the middle there like that?
Yeah, I mean, look, we've talked about it at all three levels now. I think the middle of their defense at all three levels has to be a huge focus, right? And all of those things, all those layers play off each other. The defensive tackles stopping things between the tackles, the linebackers cleaning things up and getting where they need to be, and then the safeties being able to play down in run support, especially the way the game is played now. Run support at safety is so much more important even than it used to be. It just depends, who's going to play in the box. If it's a guy like McNeil Warren, like we talked about earlier, I just think when you look at the middle of their defense as a whole, it has to dramatically improve. It's been a problem for the last 2 or 3 years, both in run defense and coverage. So, yeah, defensive tackle, linebacker, safety, working all the way up. I would argue those are the Bills' top 3 needs on the whole team.
I cannot disagree with you. Do you guys do you do a mock, Dalton?
I think oh yeah, we do a ton of them. We've got our mock draft simulator.
I know they do a ton. Have you done one yet or no?
I've done several of them, both on the NFL and college show. I'm going to write another one actually this weekend and put it up Monday. Might even do multiple rounds. I might do 2 or 3 rounds in that mock just to kind of get out ahead and see what the multi-round strategy is. But definitely, right, we do them all the time.
Who in your latest mock, who'd you have the Bills taken?
Oh,
you remember?
What was it? I'm trying to think. Oh, I don't believe it wasn't a receiver. It was a defensive player. I'd have to go back and look because I've done so many of them over the last guy. The guy I honestly get to them the most if he's available is CJ Allen. I just think getting that leader in the middle of their defense is big. I might even get, depending on who, I forget the order of the early 20s. CJ Allen and Dylan Thieneman are, I think, the 2 names for me to watch with that pick.
Okay, very good. All right, I want to thank you, Dalton, for coming in here and spending a half hour. Bills draft talk is always a hot topic in Buffalo. I'll be in Indy, hopefully, and maybe I'll run into you over there. But I want to thank you for being here, Dalton.
Absolutely, Sal. See you in Indy. Appreciate it.
All right, folks, that'll do it today. This is Believe in Bills, presented by FanDuel. I'm not sure what Adam's schedule will be next week, but I'm going to be in Indy. He will not. We'll figure something out as we go. But until then, everyone have a great weekend, and we'll talk to you from Indy. Again, Dalton, thanks a lot.